ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to U Turn, a podcast where my friends and I discuss topics related to our community. Our today contributor is Alfred Malwaj, and the topic of discussion today is on imposter syndrome. Alfred, what is imposter syndrome and why is it important for today's discussion?
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation again. I really appreciate what you've been doing with the U-Turn podcast. Listening a lot of comments and people giving feedback about how to get it better.
Mhm.
And the topic of of today is actually very important because imposter syndrome, just to give a little bit of a definition, it is a psychological and sometimes pathological symptomology that we have internally where we feel even though objectively we are qualified, we feel internally that we are actually a fraud, that we might be found out at some point that I'm not qualified, um, and you feel a sense of self doubt in an environment where you are in, and it's important politically and economically and socially because most of our people, especially South Sudanese people, come from different places. They've had to move from South Sudan to Ethiopia, from Ethiopia to Kenya, from Kenya to different part of the world. And in every setting that they go in, they feel you have to catch up to the cultural predisposition of those places, and you may feel like you are a social misfit. Uh, you don't feel you belong. They speak a different language. They have different cultures. They have different political affiliations, and you are basically starting from a scratch. And most of our people, um, if you bring it over here to Canada, we have people that are not. We are not participating in the political space of Canada uh, for the most part because we feel some people feel like they're not qualified to actually present themselves for this position
Oh, to run for
for offices.
offices.
And
Yeah.
and you look around, most of people have graduate degrees. They're really qualified. They went to the top universities in the country, and somehow we still feel like we don't belong here. Well, we're not qualified enough to present ourselves for these positions. And even in work spaces, we might find ourselves not actually socializing properly because of feeling of self doubt or inadequacy. And
So we
in the
may not even ask for a pay raise.
yeah, yeah, you may not ask for pay raise because you're afraid you're not qualified to, or you don't deserve to be given a pay raise.
Mhm.
Or sometimes, and this is the most annoying part of it, people often apply for jobs that are really below their qualification because they feel that's what they are qualified for, and they may turn down to give a shot at jobs that are really well paying because internally, even though you can objectively say they are qualified for it, they still feel like they are not qualified because it's a different environment, different language, different cultural settings, and it's really a social issue and a political issue as well on many levels. And we need to be able to talk about this to encourage ourselves to overcome some of these issues that are inherent within us that we need to integrate to wherever we live.
Wow, that's very scary. And thanks for that wonderful elaboration. Have you ever felt it?
That's a good question. I have felt it in multiple times in wherever I've worked.
Yeah.
Um, I think my first instance of this imposter syndrome happened when I first arrived in Canada. And even though I was a good student in Kenya and I was sitting in class of 2,000 students at the university, I see almost 99% of the students have laptops. And I've never used a laptop before. And they're all typing so fast as the lecturer is talking. And here with a piece of paper and a pen, trying to catch up to make sure that I get all the information. And the professors are cracking some jokes, and I hear people laughing. Uh,
What?
so there's a latency. There's a latency between when the joke actually hit home and people laughing, and when I've actually understood what the joke was about. And then
So you missed the laughing point.
and it's part of the education
Uh-huh.
pedagogy, right?
Yeah.
Being able to integrate and actually understand what the prof is saying. Some of those jokes are actually what encode a lot of information that you need to know about the subject. So I'm missing out, and I'm here trying to use a piece of paper, and everybody's typing, and I just felt inadequate already. Yeah.
Did you have a laptop and you are running with pen and paper, or what happened? You came. You had
Yeah,
a.
we grew up in Kenya, and the high school that I went in, we had a phobia for computers. We didn't want to learn about computers because it was not examinable to begin with, and it took a lot of time for us to study it. And because of that, we just said, it's, to hell with computers. We're just gonna pass other courses, and we should be able to go to university. But uh, when you come to Canada, where the country has entirely embraced technology, you have to fit in somehow. And although objectively, if you look at your grades and you think I belong here, but when you look around you, everybody seems to know what they're doing. It's just you that is a total odd out, and that is and that is an issue. I remember when you go to computer classes in high school, and the teacher say, "Can you double click?" We go,
That's so funny. Oh, you had to remind me of my days in Girls. We
yeah,
used to like remove our shoes and go to computer lab
yeah, yeah,
barefoot
yeah, yeah.
like it was a mosque.
Yeah, it was like the most at the burning bush. Leave your shoes outside, go
Yeah.
in. Computer was like so respected. Yeah. And then
And how did
they say right click, and you only have one mouth. How can you right click? You have to left click at some point too. Right?
thank you. And so back to the topic of discussion. So when was your U-turn moment like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think part of overcoming the imposter syndrome is actually looking at objective metrics that you can measure. For example, if you're in class and you're performing above average.
So was your pen and paper you
Yeah,
were
I
also
was doing above average, I guess. So
okay.
I felt like, well, I can't be that bad if I'm actually doing well in my courses. And also being able to make friends, reach out to folks that you can easily relate with. And actually, because of the imposter syndrome, sometimes we people and most immigrants tend to conglomerate together and avoid integrating with the members of the Canadian society who have already been born here, and that in itself lead to some form of isolation. So you want to find a way to integrate to the folks that you work with at work, the people that live with you. Try to participate actively in any activities so that you can meet new friends and make acquaintances. And those are the folks that actually helped me a lot when I was in school. And that way you can become confident that you have a group of friends in which you can relate. And that's how you try gradually to integrate.
So were there like student outside South Sudanese community that you
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There were a lot of students that I met that became some of my lifelong friends up to today. And it's because of those that I was able to get referred to other services that I would not have known if I just kept to myself. And
but there's this challenge where I was when I was in University of British Columbia, the the students that were like more into other races were seen as if they don't want to associate with you. So how do you strike a balance between integrating to well into other like communities and also maintaining friendship with
yeah,
people
yeah,
from
yeah,
your
yeah,
own?
yeah. That's an interesting question. And it's one that we should all be concerned about too, because you just don't want to abandon your people just to embrace new people. That's not how to go.
Or to improve your
To improve
your syndrome
your, your
symptoms.
your 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 image or something. And
Yeah.
it was actually very common for a lot of South Sudanese, right? Even when in Kenya,
Yeah.
you see people trying to associate more with Kenyans than with their fellow South Sudanese, and
Mhm.
that I think it's an inferiority complex, and it's a different kind of issue. And but you have to
So it's not imposter syndrome.
you're not feeling like you're a fraud here. In this case,
Oh.
you are just feeling basically trying to think that another group is actually more superior to you, and so you want to just pander to them
Oh.
and leave your people behind. I think the best way to do is to go together. I think what they say, I think was it Maya Angelou or something? They say if you want to go far, I think it's African proverb. If you want to go far, go alone. But if you want to go farther, you have to go together. So you have to work with your people to get to where you want to go.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much, Alfred, for this insightful conversation. What message do you can you give to our audience?
Yeah, true. Dear audience, in order to, you have to work in yourself to find a way to overcome some of these fears that we have. The imposter syndrome is like a common phenomenon. It's not just, even people at the very, very, very top of the hierarchy feel internally that they are not qualified, and you might be a candidate for the imposter syndrome, where you feel I am going to be found out at some point. I'm going to be fired. I'm just passing by, and you're passing just as an imposter, not actually a very qualified person. I think it begins with self confidence, believing in yourself, believing your abilities, believing your competencies. And by doing that, you are able to reach out to people when you need help. Um, one of the biggest issues with the imposter syndrome is that people tend to not seek help
Mhm.
because of self doubt itself. So it's really a very inhibiting phenomenon. So you want to have self confidence, reach out to your mates, your coworkers, your friends, uh, so that you can actually integrate in any situation you are in, because you are qualified. If you look at your performance indicators, you've gone to the best, some of the best universities, you've passed your courses, you're doing really well, but internally you're still self doubting. You need to overcome that, because without overcoming it, you are going to be limiting yourself in so many ways.
Thank you so much, Alfred. And yes, thank you, our